sure everybody noticed we missed our last meeting because officers were not available and it wasn't worth proceeding, but the dashboard report actually came out to members anyway. Right, I will do apologies. Emily, have we got any apologies?
We have received apologies today from Councillor Rob Stewart and Martin Nichols. And if I may, Chair, just very briefly ask the panel, as it's this is our first meeting of the municipal year.
Yeah.
Could I ask the panel to confirm convener, please? I understand Councillor Jeff Jones is happy to continue.
I move Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks everybody for that. Right, moving on to the next one. Any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest? No, we can't see anybody. Prohibition of whip vote and declaration of party whips. Okay, nobody been approached. Right, if we move on to the next item, which are the minutes of the previous meetings. Hang on a second when I get my papers again. Right, we've got the 2nd of March. We can go through them. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. I don't seem to have other. What other minutes are there, Emily? We've got minutes down. Are those the only minutes?
Those were the complete minutes. Yes.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay. As I said, we didn't have another meeting, so there won't be any minutes for that. Right. Have we received any public questions?
No public questions received today. No.
Okay. No, we didn't go through a roll call earlier because it doesn't seem to be needed actually these days. But if I can just tell the panel that we've actually got Nick Parry from Comms today actually observing. And I assume we've actually got all the officers here. Robert Francis Davis, cabinet member, Phil Holmes and Hugh Mowbray. Are they all here?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, right, we'll move straight on then really to the project update report, i.e. the dashboard. Who's actually taken us through it? Is it you, Hugh?
Yes, Chair, that's me.
Okay.
That's me. If I try and share it.
Yeah, if you can, please.
Hopefully you can see that.
Well, I can see that. The second page is a bit small. You know, the first one you showed.
Right.
You can pull it up a bit.
Is that any better?
Can you do full screen?
Yeah, it's
sorry, I can do that. Yeah.
That's easier then, I think.
Is that better?
That's much better.
I can't see people's hands and things now, though. So if you have any questions, please.
Okay. Well, I'll
intervene. This is obviously the first page summary, so I won't dwell on this unless there's any issues that you want to look at. I don't think there's any huge changes from the last issue that was sent out. In terms of Copper Bay Phase 1, we're still facing some minor delays, but given where we are and given the materials issues that generally the construction industry's got at the moment, I think we're pretty much doing very well on that. And Buckingham are actually, it just has the benefit of having such a large contractor that they're using all of their sites and sort of using materials and dry lining from other sites to come to Swansea, for example. So it's they're trying to maintain the contract as best they can. So I think that is it. You know, there are undoubtedly some minor delays, but it's proceeding very well in that respect. The church hall, the superstructure and the roof is now complete, and the external cladding is actually going on as we speak. The residential block is being finalised and is being fully fitted out inside as well. So that's nearing completion, and the fins have been going on the north side car park as well. So that's starting to look really good, I think. So that's a positive. The coastal parkland, the sort of hard landscaping of that is being progressed prior to the greening going in. And obviously there are water play and other sort of issues or additions to that which are being worked on at the moment. The pavilion in the park, works for that are at an advanced stage. The roof is on, so it's now getting to virtually a watertight position. So that's actually doing really well as well. The bridge is just the finishing touches now in terms of the internal floor colours and the internal finishes and tapping rail details for that. So that's all being worked on as we speak. The cabinet report for the north side has been approved, so those works can be completed as well. And works to the bike hub, that's moving forward as well. So there's quite a lot of things going on site. The hotel, we're still looking into the funding aspects of that because that is a difficulty, but we're looking at solutions and options for moving that forward. And the digital in terms of the CCTV and the Wi-Fi around the site, etc. All that is being finalised and being put in as we speak as well with the partners, Vodafone as well in that respect. So there's still a lot of work going on with various council colleagues on the maintenance side of things, and there's a clear schedule on that. And we've got a huge number of meetings going on with colleagues to deal with the operational, with the budgets, to make sure this is properly maintained and is of a standard that we've set by the architectural design and the landscaping design, so that is maintained through the life of the building. The external is the council, the internal is the Ambassador Theatre Group responsibilities. In terms of highways, there are some transport orders which are being progressed, and that's there was a meeting held with ward members to discuss that. Leasing, again, that's going really well in the current climate. All units are now under offer. We're very close to finalising the legal agreements on the pavilion operator as well. So that's something which is gone remarkably well in the current climate as well. So that's just shows the positivity of the scheme and the interest which that has drawn. And again, the heritage panel, which is going to provide some level of protection for the residents in the marina area, that is being designed up, and that will sort of continue. And if you may have noticed that the gold panels are now going up on the facade with the LEDs in it. So that is another key part of the design moving forward. So those are the key updates really on phase one, if there's any questions on that.
Yeah, I got Peter Black.
Yeah, sorry, can I ask a question that's been nagging me ever since this project was mooted? The 97,000 LEDs, you've got flats over the road. Are these LEDs actually pointing out towards any residential properties?
The LEDs are designed so there are areas of high density and there are areas of lower density, and obviously as you go towards the around the back of it towards the arena, that is a very low density area. There are LEDs there, but it's not going to cause any interruptions, and they can be switched off if necessary as well. There are LEDs which on the front of it which point more towards the road than the residential elements. So it's been designed with the high density areas pointing towards the road, pointing towards the public square by the hotel, and pointing towards the park as well, so that events can be held in both those public square areas as well. So it should not have any material effect on any of the residential units.
So the new flats we're building on the other side of the road, they're not affected by these LEDs? They
will be able to see the LEDs, most definitely, but the high density area doesn't definitively point towards those flats, but it certainly will be seen from the flats and the restaurant which is underneath the flats.
So they may need blackout curtains then?
Well, they need curtains.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, Wendy.
Yes, just a general query, really. Has there been much feedback on the bridge? there was an initial report in the Post when it went out, but I just wondered if the council has received any feedback, and if so, was this mostly positive or negative?
I think that, as you quite rightly say, there was some initial sort of feedback in the social media, which seems to have died down significantly. And my understanding of the social media responses from colleagues is that currently it's very positive. And I think that one of the things which people haven't been able to do to date is actually walk through the bridge. And when you actually go into the bridge and you walk through it, and you've got the dappled effect on the floor through the various designs on the facades of it, it is magical, to be honest with you. And I think it's that again will improve and change people's perceptions of the bridge. And I think sort of after the initial shock, and the other point to make really is that it's only the bridge was there in isolation. You haven't got the rest of the palette in terms of the fins on the car park, the facade of the arena, etc., etc. So seeing that all together, and I've been asking people to reserve judgment until they see the whole colour palette together as well. So I think it's going to be it's all designed to work together. So it's I think it's going to be a real selling point for Swansea. And again, just to confirm, I think that my understanding of the feedback more recently is it's all been quite positive.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm ever hopeful.
Okay, Chris Ollie, but I can see Robert Francis Davis. Do you actually want to comment on that, Robert?
Yeah, just on that issue, I think it's fair to say that on the first couple of days, there was people loved it, people hated it. People thought it looked like a taco shell, others looked like a cheese grater or a crunchy bar. 10,000 people hit social media on that first week. And by the second or third week, it had all changed to very positive. A lot of people don't like change. When you think of it, you think of Paris, you think of the Eiffel Tower. When the Eiffel Tower was built, the French government had a promise to take it down because nobody liked it. By the end of the year, everybody said, don't you dare take it down, because they loved it. And the same with other statues, like the Statue of Liberty in America. People didn't want it, but when you think of going into New York, you think of the Statue of Liberty. And if you had to describe France or Paris by one drawing, you would draw the Eiffel Tower, and you can describe it. So perhaps it's good. It's controversial. I took two secretaries, the Secretary of State for Wales and the Minister, through the bridge, and they couldn't believe how close it was to Oxford Street. It's going to be, I believe, a major thoroughfare connecting the maritime quarter to the sea. But love it or hate it at the moment, yeah. People are talking about it, and that can only be good.
Yeah, okay. Chris Ollie.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Can I ask about the hotel and the leasing arrangements? I don't need to know the names of the company, but are they local companies or are they multinationals? That's the leasing, because you say the leasing strategy is nearly finalized. So are they local companies or national companies? And the second one is the hotel, the funding problem. Is the funding problem still with the tour from the Welsh government? Well, was it Tour Wales or wherever it is, or Visit Wales?
Visit Wales.
Is the issue still with that, or is it a separate issue? Thank you.
Okay, well, in terms of your first question, the company that we've appointed is a UK wide company who own about 40 hotels, and they are the company who is the proposed developer at the moment. And they would be looking to franchise, because most hotels are done on a franchise basis, yeah, to an international brand with a significant sales sort of power through their sort of internet sales engines, and that is what drives a lot of hotel bookings around the world, to be honest. Here, the quality and the size of the brand and the size of their booking websites is a key aspect of that, which we're currently talking to one of the top brands in that respect.
Okay, On the leasing issue, Hugh.
On the leasing issue, the current issue is general funding in the market. Because of the economic climate, funding isn't currently available to hotels to actually build. We have engaged with Visit Wales, and there is a potential offer on the table from them. But it's the gap funding, and we're continuing to talk to Visit Wales and the Development Bank for Wales, and looking at options for how we can sort of bridge that gap. So we're looking at sort of an options report at the moment.
Would that option report include us borrowing more money to do it?
I suppose that's one of the options, but I don't think that would be the preferred option, because this is part of the city deal, and it is a private sector match funding requirement of the city deal. So it's something which we do need to explore as far as we can in that respect. So we're not, I think that's something we do need to try and progress.
In the report, it says the leading strategy for finalising pavilion operator, and I'm assuming these the concourse operators as well. Have we got local companies, or is the pavilion a multinational?
No, every letting that is going to be the council's letting, because we don't let any of the concourse or any of the inside of the arena. No. That's ATG's responsibility. Right. The pod in the park, as it's being called, the cafe in the park area, and all of the smaller units on the bridge ramp link into the arena are all local businesses who it's under offer to. Okay. We purposely did not target any national operators, and that's it's worked out really well, very positively actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Hugh.
Okay, thanks, Will Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. At a previous meeting, we were discussing the contract for the LED lighting system that wraps around the building. And if I remember, casting my mind back, you were still considering whether it was something that the council did the maintenance on in-house, or whether it was contracted out. And that wasn't actually budgeted for or commented on in the business plan. So just wondering if you'd made any progress on that, and if it had been updated in the business plan.
I can confirm it's definitely in the business plan in terms of its maintenance, because the management responsibility for the facade is the council's. So the LEDs is the council. So in the business case, or in the business plan as well, there is money in there for maintenance, there's money in there for operation, and there's sinking fund contributions for replacement as well in due course, as and when the LEDs would need replacing, which is in 15 to 20 years time in reality. So all that is built into the process. We are in the process of talking to a number of potential operators who can operate on our behalf. That decision hasn't been finally made, and that's my leisure colleagues who are going to be operating the screen, so they're party to that discussion and are party to making that decision in due course, but it hasn't quite been made yet, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, great, because obviously it's one of those things that I'm sure it'll look fantastic, but if it breaks, it's one of those things that needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Otherwise, it sort of ruins the whole aspect, doesn't it? So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, and obviously the whole, the majority of the objects in the arena, which are our responsibility, will have sort of at least 12 months maintenance guarantees as well. So there's an initial maintenance guarantee, and then it's the obligations and having the right teams in place to deal with those afterwards as well, which and that's part of this work in terms of this maintenance schedule. There's a lot of work being done with all colleagues across the council, from just the parks element to the highways elements, to the leisure elements, etc. So all of that has been party to significant discussions with Martin and with all of the heads of service who will be responsible for taking these obligations on.
So just to confirm, sorry, Chair, just very quickly, just to confirm, the decision hasn't quite been made whether it's in-house or contracted out.
For the LEDs, that's something which we are looking at the moment. Yeah. Everything else will be in-house.
Okay. Right. Susan Jones. Sue.
Thank you. Two questions really. One, you said about the lighting within the bridge. Have the visual handicap people been consulted with that? Will it be a problem for people with visual handicap?
There have been consultation meetings with all of these parties. It shouldn't be an issue. There will be guide rails within the bridge as well. There'll be tapping rails to make sure that they can safely navigate the bridge. Obviously, the lighting in there at the moment is only a temporary solution to just for working and just to show what it can actually achieve. So the permanent solution is yet to go in. So, and I'm sure we'll be having further consultation on the final solution as well with various parties.
Thank you. The second question is the units that have been leased. Can you give us a flavour of what type of businesses are going there?
I can't give names at the moment, unfortunately, because we're in legal discussions. But there is quite a good selection. It's all it's basically all cafe, restaurant, food type businesses, but they are all 100% local occupiers, which are, there's such a good supply of local businesses who do that sort of thing in the region. I think once as soon as we can release the names, once the legal aspects have been finalised, I would hope you'd be very pleased with what's been secured, and I think I'm extremely pleased in terms of what we've been able to get to this position in the current market, which is really positive.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I got two questions, really. The first one, Hugh made a comment about a palette of colours, and this isn't a criticism, genuinely want to know. The fins on the car park are copper, and the actual area is called Copper Bay, and yet the bridge is gold. What was the thinking behind that? And my second question is about the highways and the TROs, which you're going to speak with ward members about. Last night, we were trying to get to Key Parade about 5:10, and it was gridlocked back nearly to Brimmill Lane. So I'm just wondering what kind of traffic regulation orders we're putting in place that would help a free flow of traffic. Thank you.
Okay, in terms of the traffic, I think that sort of there are obviously various light systems going in, and there are various crossings there as well. So it's making sure that the orders are in place to allow the free flow. Obviously, this has been designed in conjunction with Highways colleagues who've approved the overall system, and the council itself is undertaking these traffic orders to put those works into place, basically. So I think it's been well designed, it's been well received by our Highways colleagues, and they are basically taking responsibility for it. So I can check what the issue was last night, but whether it was a delivery or whether it was sort of something backing up, I don't know, if I'm honest. But I can check on that and come back to you. But I can't sort of answer that at the moment. And sorry, what was the first question?
So it wasn't necessarily something to do with the arena. The whole area happened to be gridlocked, St Helens St Helens Road as well. So I just wondered, we don't have a free flow of traffic, but you've answered the question partly. If they're going to look at regulating the lights so they all are on green together, or because they're not, and that's an issue. The next one was the palette of colours, and why are the fins copper to reflect Copper Bay, and yet the bridge is gold. So I just wondered what the thinking was, really. It's not a criticism, I just want to know.
No, this is an architectural design in that respect, and the colours are all meant to go together. It's not actually copper, the colour is actually dusky pink. So the whole design has been taken into account. So you've got the dusky pink, you've got the if you look at the tiles on the building, those actually go, the prow of the building is the lightest bit, and as you go around each corner of the building, there's more red in it, which goes darker towards the dusky pink element, and then you've got the gold of the arena, which is starting to go on now. So again, I would hold your thoughts on that until the rest of the gold facade is on as well, and then you can see the arena, the bridge, once all the fins are completed, and the residential block and the tiles there together. So it's meant to be a harmonious design and a harmonious colour change from the dusky pink through to the gold on the arena as well. So yeah, it's a bit artistic and a bit architectural.
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple of questions really on this. I can see the target completion date for the arena on your first sheet is September 2021. I'm assuming that might slip a bit anyway because of the perhaps supply chains and COVID and so on. But perhaps, added to that, we were talking about the hotel, and I can remember a figure of about 21 million was quoted, set aside, not so much in this, the part of the 135 million, but a separate figure. How much of a problem is that going to actually create the longer, because you could open the arena and then have to construct the hotel? I'm assuming that the hotel is going to cater for some of the acts in the arena as well. So how, aren't the contractors really are going to be off-site then, and you're going to have to go through another tender procedure? So how that's going to cause a lot of disruption in future, possible disruption.
Yeah, well, it's been designed, so it's because we didn't know definitively when it could be built. It's been designed so as it can be added independently, so it's not going to impact on the arena operation in terms of a construction phase. Obviously, the ideal would be it would be there and ready and open, but that's unfortunately not gonna happen. So we've got no problems with it being designed, and we may have to enter into a separate contract in due course. But again, that's something which we may or may not be actually doing, because if we carry on with the company we're talking to, they are the contracting organisation. We wouldn't be contracting or paying to build it. So that comes back to securing we're working with the company to secure the finance to make it work, in essence. So it's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world either, to be honest. I think it's perfectly capable because it's an isolated site. Everything else will be put in place. The permanent sort of road access to the service yard for the arena and the service yard for the hotel, and landscaping will go in, and we will then have to work through the process of trying to get the hotel delivered as soon as we can. It's again, it does help with the arena, but again, it's not a fundamental requirement of ATG for the hotel to be there day one in that respect. So it's not something which is a critical path item.
But the hotel at the end of the day is a critical part of this. So
yeah.
It is, right. Okay.
I don't disagree that we need, and frankly, Swansea needs more than one good quality hotel, and some of the major brands we've been talking to would definitely be interested in more than one hotel in Swansea, which is a positive. It's the construction phase is the more difficult element at the moment because of the current economic climate. Okay,
thanks. I see no more questions. If we move on to the next page, then please, Swansea Central North.
Yeah, Swansea Central North. This is the public sector hub. There's been a lot of progress actually with GPA. They've now sort of identified circa 1,000 full-time equivalent jobs that could be accommodated in here. So I'm hoping we're going to make some good progress on this now moving forward. So we're hoping for the GPA, the Government Property Agency machine, to kick into place to actually sort of drive this forward. And this obviously links potentially in with the Shaping Swansea sort of appointment, which we're going to talk about shortly as well. So that's all I want to say about that, really.
I can see no questions actually on that. So we've identified government departments that are prepared to actually relocate into Swansea.
Yeah, we haven't identified it. This is for the government to do and to have a hub. Their critical mass is 1,000 FTEs, so they've actually got to that. So they've identified a number of internal bodies who would actually move into the hub, in essence. Yes.
Okay, Chris Ollie.
Thank you, Chair. Hugh, this public sector hub, where exactly is it going to be located? And on top of that, do we have any idea if these 1,000 jobs are new to Swansea, or are they jobs that are currently in Swansea that will be moving into it?
Yeah, the location of the hub is immediately next to the ramp, whether you've got the multi-storey car park, then you've got the ramp, and the site for the hub would be at the moment, at least, and next to that ramp. And that we've done some massing on that, some testing to make sure that the sort of circa 115,000 square feet needed to meet this requirement can be accommodated, and that's been proved in that respect through the architect's massing design. So that's the location in essence. So sorry, Chris, I've forgotten your second question.
Are they new jobs to the city,
Sorry,
or are they
yeah.
jobs that could be possibly in the city in a different area that would be brought forward into this hub?
I think it's to be honest, it's a complete mixture. There are quite a lot of new jobs, but there are elements which would be moving. They would be moving anyway, and we could lose them to Swansea if they didn't move into a new location in Swansea. So I think there are benefits, and obviously lots of these jobs could be currently out of town, so it benefits the city centre by bringing more people and more critical mass and footfall into the core city centre.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, see no more questions. We move on to the next one, the Kingsway infrastructure.
Kingsway infrastructure works are coming to an end on that. The only sort of works which are outstanding really is the Duratherm, which is the sort of crossing points you can see on the road at the in Oystermouth Road at the moment. It's a very similar thing to that. Basically, that is weather dependent, so we're looking at doing that. It hasn't actually been finalised as far as I'm aware, so that will be looked at shortly. And we're also sort of dealing with the fallout of the Dorner sort of failure, and we're looking at dealing with some of the issues around that, with which will be mitigated by the bond that was in place when they were appointed. So there's still some works going on, but it's largely now complete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the leader actually forwarded some figures actually to everybody. I'm sure everybody had sight of them. You know, the Kingsway cost at the end of the day on the figures here are 14.2 million. Are we going to exceed that at the end of the day? And you say the bond will cover it. How much bigger, how much larger is that cost going to be if it is going to be any larger? Do we know yet? Or?
I can't answer that definitively at the moment, I'm afraid. I think it's going to be there or thereabouts, and there's a lot of work going on at the moment just to sort of confirm the position in terms of whether the bond will so I think we can report back to you on that probably at the next meeting, I suggest.
How much does the bond cover? How much is it, you know, how much are we covered for, shall I say?
From memory, I believe it's circa 600,000 to 800,000.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, it'd be interesting to see what the final costs are anyway. Okay, right. If we move on to the next item, which is 7172, the Kingsway.
7172 the King. Oops, sorry. 7172 the Kingsway. Basically, the FPR7 cabinet report was approved. The appointment of Bouygues as the main contractor has also been sort of is in legals at the moment, so we're waiting for an exchange of contracts there, and subject to that there'll be a start on site in August of this year in essence. So all going well. So that's that will start in August, and completion is Q2 23.
Yeah, I know we had a special scrutiny actually on this anyway, but if anybody wants to ask questions, I can see Chris Holly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hugh. Hugh, when are we going to be able to actually say publicly what the cost of this building will be and the potential of what it's likely to produce? Because I know we've seen the projections of the jobs is like that could be put into the building, but obviously there are a number of issues that obviously because of confidentiality we can't discuss. So I was wondering when that can happen, because obviously there is a great deal of interest in what happens to the old Oceana site, and as you know, we've had public comment and refused to give anything in the public domain because of the confidentiality, and I was wondering when that is likely to end. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll obviously need to take some legal advice from colleagues on that, and then obviously the earliest that could ever happen is once we're in contract with the contractor. We're not there yet, unfortunately. That's going to be quite close. So that will that I don't think that'll be very long, to be honest with you. I think we can probably release that in the next month, hopefully, once the contractor's appointed, subject to any legal advice on that. The other point in terms of jobs, obviously, as we go through the letting process, that's going to take a bit more time to evolve. I think the good news is I think we're pretty close on a couple of lettings now, which we can hopefully get over the line very shortly. but obviously the outputs in terms of the total number of jobs probably needs to wait until the building's in place and is starting to mature, to be honest with you. So it is a little bit of time. Usually it's but it's by year 5 really that you'd measure the outputs in terms of certainly the jobs created, etc.
I quite understand that, Hugh, and I don't expect that on day 1 the place will be full. That's not what I'm concerned about is what we can actually say in the public domain. And it would be nice if you could find out off legal colleagues that what we can say and what we can't say.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very important part of the scrutiny process of this.
Yes, no, I'm happy to do that, and we can. We've obviously got the economic benefit analysis stuff, and that's got a lot of the figures in there which are independently produced. So I will discuss it with legal to see if we can release some of those figures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I notice under the heading of risks, not only in relation to this project but in other projects that we'll be looking at in a moment, a reference to possible consequences of Brexit. Now, that's very interesting. I mean, we're aware nationally from reports of inadequate labour because former EU construction workers have chosen to return to their home countries, decided that the situation in this country, the hostile environment that the government has created, for example, for immigrants and others is not appropriate, and the problems that EU nationals generally are having. So what do you anticipate might be the problems, both in terms of staffing, of course, but also of materials, both on this project and others? Thank you.
Very good question, because I think there is a shortage of labour at the moment in the UK generally. That's a factor of, as you indicated, a lot of the labour has left the country because of the Brexit issues. But also there is so much going on in the region at the moment. There is so much competition for labour. That is another issue, to be honest, which that flows on really into the materials. There are definitely material issues linked to Brexit, and paperwork and lorries being stranded in various ports and waiting for materials to be delivered. Mariner Street, for example, is suffering from they're struggling to get cladding at the moment because it's stuck on a dock in Spain, as I understand it. So there are definitely issues there. You cannot get concrete for love nor money at the moment. Plasterboard, scaffolding, all of these things are a genuine issue, and it's a mixture of reasons for why. Part of it is the Brexit issues. Part of it is the general economy, and part of it is there is just so much construction going on in the region, which is a positive in many respects. But obviously, it does impact on how schemes can be finalised. And obviously, that's a key issue for us in terms of 71, 72, and we're seeking clarification and the commitment from the contractor that they're going to have all the materials they need in place.
Thank you. Clearly, we're not going to be taking back control fully. Thank you.
Okay, right. Everybody can hear my phone ringing. I'm going to ignore it. Right.
Peter.
Well, I don't know who it is. I'll let Mary answer it now if she can hear it. She's out the garden, so. Right. Okay. No more questions on that. If we move on to Wine Street now, then, please. If we move on to Wine Street, yeah, we've been arranging regular meetings with sort of the traders there. The response hasn't been brilliant, if I'm honest, but there's been quite a discussion with a number of the key traders there, which has got us into a good position, I think. And obviously, BID and some of the housing associations have been included in that process. There's a lot of work going on. Most of the paving has now been sort of taken up, cleaned, relayed, and replaced and added to where necessary. And having walked the street, I think that looks really good. Actually, it's made a huge difference in terms of looking at that.
Street furniture is starting to arrive, so that will go in as well. And the landscape consultants will also be just when they're appointed, so they can sort of look to do the landscape elements of that. And we have been selecting trees as mature as possible to put into the street moving forward. So we have agreed, after quite a lot of consultation, really, the hospitality layout in terms of where the seating goes, in terms of the adjacency to the buildings, etc. So that's going adjacent to the buildings now. So that's been finally agreed between all the various groups, including traders and including the sort of the groups that we would normally consult with, really. So and it's progressing well. So I think that's where we are on Wine Street at the moment.
Okay, Mike White. Oh, Chris, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I say, it's very encouraging to hear you saying about all the, the interest for the local traders and that within the Wine Street, which is really coming to fruition there. Are you able to advise as where we are in regards to bringing an anchor store to the city of Swansea? Any progress on that, Hugh?
That's I can't really comment on that at the moment. I think there are sort of the Debenhams itself is in private ownership, as you're probably aware. So we are speaking to the owners of that. But there is a work stream going on looking at how we can deal with that, and obviously the repurposing report which we've commissioned also considers options for the quadrant in that respect. And I think that's all I can really say at the moment.
Okay, Chris, sorry, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Here, a couple of issues on Wine Street. One is obviously you've just mentioned about the outdoor seating and the way in which it's going to be controlled, and also you've also, I should imagine, spoken to the visually impaired about passage through and what have you. One thing I have noticed in other cities that they've built these like these hubs alongside the pavement, so people can actually sit in comfort in relatively confined areas like wooden hubs or plastic hubs or whatever. And obviously with we haven't got the best climate in the world for sitting outside to have a meal or a drink. So has that been considered about how we actually do that? And the other thing is, and this covers the whole gambit of all the various other projects, obviously we need to have a discussion with the transport companies about and taxi firms about how we get people in and out of these areas, and especially in Wine Street, where we did have numerous complaints about disabled people and the taxi firms not being able to drop anyone off close to some of the venues. And I was wondering, have we had that discussion and have we come up with any conclusions? Thank you.
Okay, in terms of covering, there's an ongoing discussion on that and how that can be achieved to the best advantage. So I don't think we haven't reached a conclusion on that one at the moment. So we'll have to come back to you on that, but it is part of the discussion. On transport, we've got a wider discussion going on with Highways colleagues about taxis, about the wider city centre, because I think it's not a sort of just a Wine Street issue. There's a bigger issue around the city centre there. So there is an ongoing piece of work and discussion on that, which again hasn't come to a conclusion. But obviously, as soon as it has, we can report back to you on the thinking on that.
Okay, Paxton, Mike, you've still got your hand up, so.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question, really. Obviously, it's a major historical area as far as the city is concerned. Are we planning to do anything in terms of interpretation boards to improve or enhance the visitor experience in that area? I know I've asked for it before, and I was told we probably would, but can we confirm that?
Yeah, I think it's something we're definitely looking at, not only here, but into the Castle Garden stuff at the moment. So that's the works which are going on across this will take this into account in the same way as we're doing it on the arena as well. So there will be interpretation panels in the street and in other schemes which are going forward as well. So I think it's something which it helps helps people understand the context of the street, etc. You know, and it was the Gold Bullion Centre for Wales, for example, in terms of the former Lloyds Bank, which was there. So it's got quite a history linked to the docks as well, hasn't it? So
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Susan Jones.
A little bit confused, Hugh. On the slide that you say there, the stakeholder liaison meeting was poorly attended. Is the reason because some of these businesses have gone bust in the hospitality sector? And coastal are not attending stakeholder meetings.
yeah, well, and basically all these people have been invited. They have been Zoom Teams meetings, so it's, you know, you only need to be in an office and a computer basically. And unfortunately, despite many sort of attempts to try and sort of do these things, they have unfortunately been poorly attended. You know, we haven't changed what we've done. You know, we did this for the Kingsway, which went very well, and it was praised in terms of the consultation which was undertaken. We've continued to do the same sort of process, but it hasn't been particularly well attended by many of the traders, unfortunately. We tried to go out to them and speak to them as well. So I think we've done as much as we can, frankly, to get as much response as we can from the traders. Some have been really good, to be fair. Others have not bothered, if I'm honest, but that's the current position.
Would this be a risk then to progression?
I don't think it's a risk to progression. It's going on outside lots of the businesses as they speak, you know. I would suggest that if they were unhappy, they would be beating our door down in that respect. So, you know, the people we've consulted, we've listened to, we've changed things. As we said, we have this very large debate on the positioning of outside seating, etc. So I think we have listened a lot. We've made amendments where we can. And with any scheme we do, consultation is a key aspect, and any stakeholders are fundamental to making any decisions, and we can only do what we can in that respect to try and reach all of these people to get as much feedback as we can, and I think that's what we've continually tried to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just following up from Paxton's question, in terms of interpretation boards, are we making use of QR codes? I think we've got a digital trail around White Rock, haven't we? And I seem to remember that there was one through the city centre at one stage a few years back. I'm not sure if that's still there, but I think it'd be useful to make use of that, because certainly if a QR code, you can log into websites and get much more interested. So I certainly would looking forward to a lot more use of that around the city centre as part of an interpretation trail, supplemented by leaflets, of course, which would then be available to people.
Yeah, well, I would hope that we're looking at the QR code side of things to link into websites, but I will take that back and confirm it. We haven't got to the stage yet of designing any of the boards, so it's that's the next stages really. So once we've got some designs, we can obviously share it with the group.
Yeah, thanks, you.
Okay, thanks. Robert Francis Davis.
Yes, I have asked officers, whether it's through the museum, archives, art gallery, and other officers, to look at QR codes. I think it is important that not only do we conserve our buildings, but we interpret what's there, because a building, as a building without interpretation, doesn't mean anything. It's like a museum, you know, we've got to not just collect and conserve, but interpret it, otherwise it's not worth having. So we are looking at it, Peter, and I think it is something to be encouraged, and have trails around the city, people using QR codes, using their phone, because there's not many people don't walk around without a phone now, and we can put a lot of information on that, and I think it's extremely important, and a way forward on interpretation throughout the city, really. My own ward in Morrison, you know, it was the first grid system to be laid out in the area, and interpret places like Tabernacle and other major churches around that we have, all part of our history, and important that we do interpret it for future generations.
Okay, thanks for that. One question I got, you know, the risk of business trailer, do we know of any businesses that have gone through down there, or?
There are some businesses which have not reopened after COVID, but generally I think it's there's been fit out undertaken on some of the businesses, and the majority of them are now open. There are some vacancies there which are obviously being let. It's not the council's responsibility to do that, but I think what we're doing in terms of the resurfacing and the pedestrianisation of Wine Street makes it a more attractive area to people looking to open new businesses there. So I think it's not only for the existing businesses, it's for to bring future businesses in as well. So I think it's only a positive for that. And we know that the economic climate for leisure is challenging, but Wine Street has got a large potential footfall and population. So I would hope the works that we're doing, and as the economy improves, those will all be relet as well.
Right. Okay. Right. If we move on to the next slide, in the Shaping Swansea.
Yeah, Shaping Swansea. Basically, the whole competitive dialogue process where you speak to the potential bidders is now closed. Bids have received and been assessed, and there is a cabinet report being prepared for the 15th of July to select a preferred bidder. And there's just a note on the slide here to say that the 20th Century Society has requested CADU to consider listing the Civic Centre. And we've actually got a meeting with CADU to have a discussion with them next week. So that's something which we are actively sort of engaging with CADU to discuss as well.
Before Chris actually comes in, with regards competitive tender and so invitation to final, what exactly are we specifying? Is it up to the tenderer to actually come up with ideas, or are we specifically saying what we want?
We specifically say what we want through every stage. There's 3 stages to the dialogue, basically, or to the competitive dialogue process. The first stage is invitation to tender, where we put out a specification document which was issued for people to express interest. From that, we then sort of shortlisted, and we instructed further detailed instructions were then issued to the various bidders for them to sort of consider, along with a number of topics which we wanted to deal with through competitive dialogue, through speaking to them, like scheme designs, like heads of terms for agreements, the commercial nature, financial aspects. So all of those would be discussed through the competitive dialogue process. Once that had been finished, we would then issue the ISFT, as it's called, the invitation for final tenders, and that sets out the questions, the detailed questions that we're asking for responses for, together with the weighting and scoring mechanisms to be answered. So there's a very detailed process. It's this is about a nine-month process, so it's not an overnight thing, with significant discussions and with the ability for tenderers to sort of ask questions and clarifications, and what the council sees as its way forward. We obviously set out the aims and objectives for this process clearly to all the potential bidders. So it's then just a matter of due process to go through the whole aspect. We've been through that. We spent 9 months talking and assessing these bids, and we're now in a position to be recommending to Cabinet a party to be appointed as preferred developer.
Before I bring Chris in, so how many people actually did bid at the end of the day?
I'm afraid that's a confidential position at the moment, but this was widely marketed. There were significant bids made, so it's not something which we would normally release at this stage.
Right. Okay. Chris Olney.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Hugh, good luck with your meeting with Cadw. Very difficult. I hope you take enough people with you to counter what is sitting the other side of the table, which is normally about 30 of them. So good luck on that. The Shaping of Swansea is, it covers a whole multitude of things. Could you give us just a flavour of the areas that we're covering? Because obviously this Castle Gardens or Castle Square, whichever you want to call it, is one of the areas. But are there any other significant areas that we're talking about? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to deal with that, Chris. I think first of all, Castle Gardens isn't one of the areas. That's outside of the scope at the moment of Shaping Swansea. There are 7 sites included, which are the St Thomas Station site, Swansea Central North, the Civic Centre, the Oxford Street School site, Site 9 in the arena, and I haven't counted those, so I think I'm there or there on Havercop Works in terms of the wider leisure destination. So those are the sites that are included, but the procurement process allows us to add and subtract to that as we move forward, because this envisages a 20-year agreement. So if there were sites which either the partner or the council wanted to include or to consider, then we could use the resources of the partner to actually look at that, and without a further procurement needed.
So we're actually looking for a development partner for either an individual site or a number of sites, for whatever development that will come forward that would suit that particular site then.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. I think, when if you remember, we did a pin notice probably about 2 years ago, saying that we were thinking about putting this opportunity to the market, and what were the market's views. And the 2 main views which came back from that pin notice were, A, this needs to be an opportunity of scale. It can't be sort of small scale, and it needs to be for a significant length of time as well. So again, we responded to both of those in terms of the documents which were issued. That's why we put the 7 sites together, plus the opportunity to bring other sites into it to create that sort of scale. And obviously it was envisaged as, what we put out was the 20-year agreement, which is what the bidders were then looking at in essence. So that was the basis of the and the other key issue for us was risk transfer, really, because we wanted a partner to come in and take risks in terms of putting the money up to take these schemes forward.
Yeah, I understand that, because that's the whole element of the development contract, is that we offload the risk onto them and we can retain land ownership. The only issue is that we've actually tried this before, and we did have competitive tendering, and we went out to the market and we were very successful. I think the issue with this one is actually how the site's going to matter together. Can you understand what I mean?
Yep.
If we are doing, we'll say, the Oxford Street School car park, that issue, when we had, and we've had a number of people that are interested in that, how would that marry with the one that's down by the marina, by the Dylan Thomas Centre? So I think, it would be interesting to see what comes back from this and how that development process will be measured up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you entirely. I think sort of these 7 sites they've not got onto the list by accident. It's we've looked at them very carefully and how they sort of link together. Obviously, sort of there's big links between the Civic Centre and Swansea Central North. Havercop Works, it builds on what's going on at the moment in terms of Penderyn and the potential for Skyline. So that's got huge potential for a major leisure destination. The Oxford Street School site fits in very much, which is going on the Kingsway, and the office developments there, and looking to sort of put that area firmly back on the map, because it'll never be a retail area again in reality, because of the changes post-COVID, and which have been escalated by COVID, I guess. So there is a clear sort of synergy between lots of these sites, and that's actually been recognised by the bidders in terms of the bids that they put forward. So I think it is an exciting sort of position to be in, and I think Swansea's now in a position, because of what's going on in Swansea, the people who are interested in Swansea wouldn't have been interested before. So I think it does give us a bit of an advantage at the moment, which is good. But we can't relax on our laurels, so we've got to make sure that sort of things move forward, I guess.
Okay, Terry Ennigan.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed anything, but I was wondering who actually writes up the contract specification or the contract specification?
Yeah, that's done. We've got external lawyers who are advising us, specialist procurement lawyers, and it's been written up between them, our in-house procurement team, our in-house legal team, and my team in essence. So there's a team who puts this together based on the council policies and the council requirements to actually sort of move to actually deliver the next phases of regeneration for Swansea, really. So that's the essence of the team which should have put this together.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sue. In regards to obviously what mentioned the Harvard Copperwork site there, there's quite a bit of work going on there at the moment. Obviously passed that again this morning, so it's very encouraging to see. But in regards to the pontoons, because we really want to encourage the use of the river as well by having river taxis to come down. I know there to from the marina up to the Copperwork site. How far are we in funding for the actual pontoons?
That's an ongoing piece of work. My colleague Paul Ralph, and I think his team, did a presentation to this group a couple of months ago on the pontoons. So that is an ongoing piece of work, and it's an ongoing bidding process to try and get the money to actually deliver it. And I think you're absolutely right. It is a critical part of the overall river corridor strategy, and how Harvard, the stadium, and further up the river can actually be activated as well. So it's an essential thing to do, and where we as officers are working on that to actually try and find solutions, basically.
Okay, right.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, no more hands. If we move on to repurposing Swansea, if we can
the repurposing report is coming to a conclusion. We've got further presentations to do to the officer group to finalise things, and we're looking at producing the report, which is probably going to be going to Cabinet now in September, I guess, because we've been doing a lot of work with the professional team looking at this to sort of to get the report in and the various interventions they're recommending into a format to then take forward. So it's almost there, and we'll then have a report to go to Cabinet in September is where we are on that.
Okay, look forward to seeing that. Right, we move on to Palace Theatre, please.
Palace Theatre, again, this is Paul's team who are dealing with this. The main contractor tender is live at the moment, so we'll see what comes back from that. Planning and listed building consent are in place, so that's good. The works compound and sort of space for the contractors is also being prepared. So there's a huge amount of work. Then there's a company that want to film the works to the Palace Theatre who've done stuff before in Swansea, so that's likely to be happening, which will record the regeneration basically of the palace, which is good. So I think that there's a lot of work going on. The main issue for this now is getting the contractors' bids back and analysing those and making sure that they're within budget. So that's where we are on that one, really.
Yeah, your actually risk says that the tender returns exceed budget, but project total budget. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
project budget. So you're evaluating them. So is it, post tender negotiation or something to reduce?
No, there's not. They've not actually been received yet. So that's just identifying that there is a risk that it could exceed budget, and we don't know the answer to that at the moment.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Right. If we move on to the powerhouse and outbuildings, please.
Yeah, I think this is the works which are mainly going on site at the moment. The contractors are well into the contract. They have asked for extension of time. We granted them 2 weeks, but again, this is linked to materials and labour aspects, so doesn't alter the contract significantly. It's still an October completion date in that respect. And we're working with the contractor. The project bank account for paying subconsultants, etc., is now in place, because there were issues in sort of putting that in place with COVID, but that's now resolved in that respect. So lots of work being done. Gas and water easements are being resolved, and how that fits with the park and ride, etc. So it's just an ongoing construction site. It is slightly behind, but nothing of any significance. So I think it's a good position at the moment generally.
Okay, thanks, Peter Black.
Yeah, what's the current timescale on the Penderyn visitor centre?
Well, the works which we are undertaking through the HLF grant will be completed in October. Then it's handed over to Penderyn for their fit out, which is going to take about 6 months. So it won't open until after their fit out is finalised in essence.
And all the legal documents have been signed in relation to Penderyn?
The last I heard was the lease had not been fully signed, so I will have to check on that position.
Okay, can we come back on that?
Yeah, by all means.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Wendy Fitzgerald.
Yeah, thank you. Under risk, it does say lack of budget to complete the scheme. LHF budget and contingency to be fully expended. So if there's a lack of budget, what is the solution going to be? Is further funding going to have to be made available from the council or from where?
Well, I think there's, the first thing is to get the tenders back and to see if that is a reality. These are the risks which have been identified as potential risks. They've not actually happened as yet. So and there are various, we obviously we can look at more funding from various sources, whether it be the council, whether it be Welsh Government, whether it be HLF. And the other option is to look at sort of value engineering the scheme to get it within budget. So there's a mixture of those things is probably likely to happen if it was over budget, but we'll have to wait and see what the tenders actually come back and actually say.
Yeah, okay, so it's a bit of a waiting game at the moment and to see see how things pan out. That's a little bit reassuring because one hopes there isn't going to be a lack of budget and we don't have to dip into resources again.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Right, Robert Francis Davis.
Yes, when we look at the site down at Harvard Copper Works, there are in total 11 listed buildings in that, and we're doing 3 up. But the ambition is to do which is probably the most attractive building there, the laboratory. Now we haven't secured HLF funding as yet. We're still talking on that. So it might have to, some of this be phased. There is a lot of commercial interest as well in it because it's just such an attractive building. But as a destination, as Hugh mentioned, it has the makings of a very good leisure destination in that with all those buildings put there. I think sometimes as well, it's a huge amount of work going into this by officers. You can see by the time Hugh's been going through all this with you, the amount of work that is going on. And the capacity within departments sometimes is stretched, but they're all working as hard as they can to get this. I think is a really exciting time with over £1 billion worth of development going on. There will be some delays in some areas. Considering this has all been going on through a pandemic, there's far more green on the than red showing.
Okay, thanks for that. Phil Holmes.
Yeah, could I just add that we've recently submitted a funding application into the Levelling Up funding that was invited by UK government. So if we're successful, and we don't know yet, we probably will in a few months' time, then some of the funding will be allocated to this project, which will help move some of the things forward that you've mentioned so far.
Okay, thanks. Everybody's still got their hands up. If we can put them down. Phil, I'm glad you actually came back on because you reminded me. One of the items or one of the parts of this meeting today was an update really on the Civic Centre, which was agreed really to be provided. And then 2 days ago, we were told we couldn't have it. It's a little bit late in the day and so on. What's the reasoning behind that?
I think it's just a timing issue, to be honest, Chair. Apologies for not communicating that earlier. That's my fault. People were on leave when the request came in. But in terms of the commercial sensitivity around some of the issues that Hugh's talked about in terms of shaping Swansea, it's felt that we delay that to a future meeting. And also, it probably would involve our colleague Jeff Bacon as well, because of course Jeff has got responsibilities for assets within the council. So, but I did ask that if we could have a forward look in terms of some of these sites that you want to delve into in terms of more detail, we could agenda those and we could prepare for those properly and bring the reports as required.
Yes, that's something we're actually going to discuss in the the work plan a little bit, to identify these sites anyway, which if we can provide them to you beforehand, it'll probably help you and give you the time to prepare a report on them. Right, okay, if we move on to the strategic sites, I'm aware we've actually got a full council meeting today, so if anybody wants to pick anything actually out of there, as we move on to the first page. Well, I actually wanted to, mention Skyline. This is ongoing. I see Chris actually wants to ask a question, but if I can identify Skyline, I can see it down as amber. I can see that Welsh Government are in the process of reviewing the Skyline business plan. We assume we're still in talks actually with Skyline. I assume they still actually want to proceed with this. And really, it's down to the Welsh Government of the day coming up with financial resource to actually back this scheme. Is that right or wrong?
No, that's absolutely right. We're still in discussion with Skyline. I actually had a call with Skyline yesterday morning. They are still keen. I also had a very good discussion with Welsh Government on the funding side of things. So I think that I'm hoping that's all going to come together within the next month or so, to be honest with you. So it's still definitely on, and it's still very positive.
Okay, thanks. Chris, how are you?
Yeah, it's the second page. It is, Chair.
Right. Well, nobody wants to ask anything on the first, right?
It's about Felindra again. With respect to, we've marketed this site now in every shape, form that you can think of for the last 25, maybe 30 years, if I go as far as to say that. We have a warehouse on it, at the moment. The total cost on this site, I don't know what it must be. It must be in tens of millions of pounds. I don't know, from the day it was demolished to where it is now. There has been renewed market interest in the Felindra site. Well, that was the same in the last report. I'm assuming it's going to be in the next report as well, because it is a very large site. I understand the Welsh Government have helped in this marketing process, but is there any, let's be perfectly honest about it, is there any way in which this site is going to be used by any job creation scheme in the near future, or are we just keep on marketing and hope somebody will come along?
It has been difficult, I think, in that respect. Basically, obviously the market conditions for the last few years haven't been great. We've got the one occupier on the site, and more recently there have been some 3 serious sort of expressions of interest for the type of occupiers we've actually would like to target. So that's very early days, if I'm honest, but that is an ongoing discussion in reality. So I would hope I can report back at the next meeting and say something different, actually. So but no guarantees on that, but there is more interest in the last month.
Okay, thank you, Hugh.
Okay, any more questions actually on that page?
Could I, sorry, Chair, could I just add to Hugh's response there? Totally agree with what Hugh said. There are inquiries. These inquiries are speculative, and obviously some of these businesses can go anywhere in the country. So there's no guarantee that they will invest in Felindra. But we always hold out hope. And what I would say as well is, we will also explore whether the council and Welsh Government can attract some funding for speculative build programs. So that may be an option where perhaps companies won't take the risk on building their own property, that we actually build a speculative development and then they occupy the building. So that's something that we are thinking through. I'm not committing to that, but that is always an option available to us should the funding be available.
I think by, you know, the funding available, if we actually build it, it means that we're going to have to borrow money again, you know, so I think that's probably a last option we would look at anyway.
We'd use grant funding, and then we'd use the private sector as match funding, so it wouldn't actually cost us anything. But again, that's all to be resolved in the future. Right.
Okay. Thanks. Right.
Can I come back, Chair, because Phil is perfectly right. You know, we had these discussions about 15, maybe 20 years ago with various organisations about match funding and about how we develop that site. What concerns me is over the years we've gone, and I won't mention some of the companies because it would be inappropriate, but we've had numerous companies come forward, from chemical companies to car manufacturers to, you know, you name it, the whole gambit of them. And what it seems to me is that we've always had support from the Welsh Government in as much as they've said, yeah, we'll help you with the site. What I would like to ask is, more like if Phil and the team can find out, is how would we prioritise this site? When you think that there are sites in the Wrexham area, the sites in the Monmouth and the Newport area which have received substantial grants to attract people, we are much further away from the, if you like, the epicenter of some of these businesses. I'm talking about the Midlands and what have you. So what sort of, can they come back? Obviously they can't say off the top of their head now what sort of grants are going to be available, because I'm thinking of one that we lost out to the West Midlands because we couldn't supply a capital grant and a capital undertaking of nearly £100 million. So to attract these type of employers would take a substantial amount of money, and I'm not sure, can the Welsh Government help us in that respect, or are we looking for a different type of industry like warehousing or whatever? But if they could come back and report to this committee what actually we are hoping to attract there.
Can I comment, please, Chair? Yeah. Welsh Government receive obviously a lot of inward investment inquiries via their sort of central team. Velindre is a tier 1 site, which means it's got the highest sort of status as far as prominence within the portfolio in terms of promoting the country. And it really does boil down to the company and their specific requirements in terms of location, labour market, logistics, supply chain, all of that stuff. And so I just want to reassure you that, you know, when we have those discussions, Velindre is always in the mix and it's always considered as an option. So that there's no sort of preference for other sites around the country. Velindre's got that status, and if it meets the customer's requirements, then it's put up as a consideration for investment.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
Okay. All right. Well, the last sheet we've actually got there, the Tower Riverside Corridor. Are there any actually questions on that? Phil, do you want to speak, or are you still with your hand up? No. Right, Peter Black.
Yeah, sorry, it's disappeared from my screen. Yeah, on the Bascule Bridge, I noticed that the budget is in red. I thought we had a grant to cover the cost of this. So I'm just wondering what the situation is with that.
I think there is a grant to cover the Bascule Bridge. There has been an escalation in costs, so we're trying to find solutions to how we deal with that.
Right, so can we seek further grant work or grant, or do we need to
Well,
borrow money?
that discussion is ongoing.
Okay. And in terms of the laboratory building, the grant, the money on that, is that a grant as well?
Yeah, that's what Phil just mentioned in essence.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, yeah.
The CRF bid for UK government funding to cover that, because Welsh government won't currently fund it because they've got their town centre first approach, so it's not town centre, so they won't fund it currently. But hopefully the CRF will come through on that. There are works on site on the lab building at the moment, just of a protective nature to make sure it doesn't collapse. So that is ongoing.
Yeah, on the Bascule Bridge, there is work ongoing at the moment on that, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we in danger of having to stop work on that, or can we just carry on?
No, I don't think we're in danger of. It's putting the bridge back. I think is going to need the additional money to make that work. So it's an ongoing piece of work to try and sort of resolve that position.
Okay, we do have a history of not putting bridges back, don't we? So we need to be careful.
Yes, even though they voted to put them back, but there we are.
Well, has it been a vote on this,
Should have left the money in then, Robert.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Bascule Bridge, there's a lot of work being carried out. It's the timber in the river that we are now looking at. Paul Ralph is doing a lot of work in it. We can ask Paul to give you further information on that if you require. But
that would be useful.
It's definitely will be going back.
Okay, I would be interested in having that information. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Right. If there's Mike, did you want to speak at all?
Yeah. Just for the cabinet members say yes, it does prove very difficult, especially with the abutments are in the water as well, and especially when we got a friend at Dirk Brewfoot who's always trying to fleece us for money as well. So I think what's been done with the bridge will hopefully come to fruition, and the bridge will be put back.
Terrible slander, Mike.
Okay, right. That's the last sheet. Right, before we move on to the annual River work plan, I don't know if Robert Francis Davies, Phil, and Hugh actually want to leave, and Nick Parry. Before we actually discuss that, are you quite welcome to stay? But
yep, fine, thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Got further meetings. Thank you very much. And but I'd like to thank you for all the work going through this. It's you can see by the program that he's gone through today is considerable. How he still got hair, I'm not sure, but the officers have worked tirelessly on this, and it's probably the biggest capital program this council's ever seen. So keep up the good work, Hugh, and thank you very much.
Yes, I mirror that. Thanks, actually. I'm sure everybody on the panel does. In all departments, staff are working extremely hard. Okay, thanks for attending anyway.
Bye.
Bye. Right. If we move on to the work plan, you can see the next meeting we've got a presentation by the Provost Steve Wilkes. I think he's been working very closely with the leader. He did do a presentation to the to us down in Carmarthen, actually, on some of the interfaces. I think it'll be interesting really to see what he actually comes up with. I know they're looking at some sort of medical school near Maudeston Hospital, so that'll be something to look forward to. With regards to the...
Is that the postgraduate medical school, Chair?
I'm not sure, Peter. That's something I think we need to actually ask and so on, because I think there's a lot of investment that needs to go into there, and it'll be interesting really to see where the investment comes from, and what part we play in that and so on. So
I think we're having I remember as an AM I had discussions about that maybe 8 or 9 years ago. So yeah.
Well, it looks a bit
coming. How is that going to tie in with what happens in Singleton as well?
Well, that's another question.
That's the point. There is something there already, Paxton, which needs replacing. I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And it is tied in. Yeah.
Well, we had an update really from, I can't remember the chap, Professor, the chap that, shall we say, left Swansea University now, who was actually dealing with the city deal. I can't remember his name. Remember he was in the... Clement, that's it. Yeah, Mark Clement. I found him very good, actually. I found him very informative with what they were actually doing. So it'll be interesting to see, what he actually put forward and what this Mr. Steve Wilkes will actually come forward with.
Sorry, Jeff, it's probably the Arch project of which they'll be talking about, which they previously dealt with. It's probably all linked in there, links in Singleton and Morriston.
Yeah, it'd be good really to see, give us an update anyway, you know what I mean, see where we actually, what part we play in it. You can see the work plan there. Now, one thing, I did bring it up briefly with Phil Holmes, I wanted an update really with regards to what's actually happening, with the Civic Centre. I know they're actually drawing up a cabinet report, and it seems to be all hush-hush, really at the present time. It's a pity, really. If we'd had more notice, perhaps we could have had prior notice and had a closed meeting, but we seem to be the poor relatives in scrutiny sometimes, so hopefully we can get that information in the future. Now, there are other, shall we say, changes. I know Chris actually brought this up with me with regards to some of the sites we've actually got some of the changes. Mike, Chris, do you want to perhaps identify, some of the sites we might be interested in?
In as much as the sites on the Shaping of Swansea?
Yes.
Well, I definitely think the one down on the marina opposite the Dylan Thomas Centre and the St Thomas site. On the St Thomas site, we had a planning application, and if people may, well, I don't know how many will remember, very few I would have thought. We had a planning consent, a planning permission. We had a planning application in for flats on that site, and it was turned down because of traffic. And the same applies then to the site down on the marina, opposite the Dylan Thomas Centre. We've had numerous applications, and we've had the St Thomas one was an application. All the others have been pre-applications, and one of the issues that has always surrounded it is the traffic issues. So it'd be interesting to see what comes back on those. On the Oxford Street site, which is one I think we should take a great deal of interest in, that site, and I know Peter will remember, it was going to be as a new museum and a new library, etc., etc. So it's these sites which, if we are going to have a developer, I think we need to be very careful of what we're actually going to be putting in them, but more and also about what is actually going to contribute to the city of Swansea, because more flats or more student accommodation might not necessarily be the right idea.
Okay. What about, some of the general sites, like an update on, aren't they going to move Pipehouse Wharf actually out and so on? Would we include those in this?
Well, there's already an offer in for Pipehouse Wharf from a housing association, and if they find architecture there, the cost goes down. At the moment, we have a figure which I'm not sure if this is a closed meeting or not, but it is a figure that the council will receive from a housing association. If they find architecture, that figure goes down by nearly 2/3. And given what happened on the site opposite the copper works, where the copper quarter is built, then I suspect that if the architecture is there, cost the developer just over £2 million. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on these sites to see what is currently what is going likely to happen.
Yeah, I'm aware, these meetings tend to, well, it's an hour and a half. We've actually spent a day, and we're actually just going through the dashboard report, whether to break the sites up in a piecemeal, not have them all reported at one particular time. How do the panel feel about that? Should we have a report on all these sites, or break them up? And what's going to be the shall we say priority? Is it going to be the there's going to be more information hopefully on the Civic Centre shortly anyway with the cabinet report. You know, whether or not we have a pre-decision scrutiny actually on that. I don't know what's actually going to be in the report, but you know, do we actually lump all these together in one meeting, or shall we break them up into separate meetings? How's everybody feel?
Jeff, can I come in perhaps? It's probably easier for Hugh to give us a report as a whole.
Right.
And it's probably easier for us because it ties it all in. But going slightly ajar, in my distant memory, I thought we were supposed to have a presentation from Swansea Bid on their view on.
Yeah, well, what actually happened, Russell Greenslade, he was due to come to the meeting that we actually cancelled. And the reason we actually cancelled it was that Hugh Mowbray wasn't available, and so on. I think Phil Holmes as well. So, you know, the dashboard report was a bit of a nonsense to actually go forward. And the only presentation we would have had was from Russell Greenslade. So that's why we actually cancelled it. He was actually due to come to the meeting today, but he couldn't come. So we do intend to actually speak to Russell, and perhaps we can fit it in. You know, I'm interested really how we fits into this really, and give us a little bit of a background of, you know, what he does, and perhaps a little bit more local knowledge and so on. Whether or not we actually fit him in the next meeting in September, you know, with the provost, you know, I'm quite happy. I'm always aware that these meetings are probably going to take about 2 hours, you know, with everything. So if everybody's happy that we can invite him to the September meeting, so be it.
I think that would be useful as to his view, and business's view of the city centre. And it may be that one, that we don't have a dashboard report, we have it in a paper form or the form that Emily sends out, but we don't discuss it, because unless there's anything that's really changed in 2 months' time, there's not going to be much difference in the building processes, but we may have more knowledge as to what's happening in the city centre. That's just, you know, my thoughts.
Yeah, how's everybody? You know, the dashboard report will be a part of every meeting. We do need an update as things actually go on, you know.
Sure, it's an exception update rather than going through it.
Yeah, we can do. Right, okay, well, we'll invite him, if everybody's happy, then to the next meeting on the 7th of September, if he's available, of course. You know, if he's not, we'll have to go for November. So I think he's just been successful in getting funding for him to carry on anyway, as I understand, you know. So yes. So you know, I find Russell quite informative. I'll be interested to see what he actually says. So if we can do that, Emily, go for September and see what actually happens. Right, if everybody's happy with the rest of it, you know, we can, if anybody wants to actually make any comments about the work plan in the meantime, you know, we can take it on board and, you know, possibly add it on. Right, if there's nothing else, we've got a council meeting at 5 o'clock, so, pardon? Sorry, my wife's shouting at me from another room.
Occupational habit.
Let me take my microphone off and see what she says. Sorry, Mary, what did you say?
Mike's still on, Chef.
I said there are people indicating.
Oh, Terry, all right. Sorry, my apologies.
Yes, Terry.